Hey guys, Jeff here, and before we get to today's episode, I wanted to let you know about our Season 4 sponsor, Adventure is Out There Travel. If you're listening to this podcast, there's a pretty good chance that you're in the middle of planning your next Disney vacation right now. So why not make it easier for yourself? By working with an Adventure is Out There travel agent, you'll be having an experienced vacation planner doing the heavy lifting for you. Adventure is Out There Travel specializes in making sure your entire group gets to experience the type of activities they want in order to make your trip even more magical. Whether heading to a Walt Disney World vacation in Orlando, flying west to Disneyland, or floating on the high seas in a Disney cruise, Adventure is Out There Travel can help you plan the vacation of a lifetime. Visit adventureisouttheretravel.com for your free, no-obligation quote today. Now on with the show.
Get ready for your weekly dose of pixie dust with Disney Coast to Coast.
Hey folks, and welcome to Disney Coast to Coast, the ultimate unofficial Disney fan podcast. I'm Jeff DePaoli.
And I'm Aaron Fairbanks.
Hey, Aaron Fairbanks.
Hey.
You know what I love?
The Haunted Mansion?
No, that's a little on the nose. I was going to say, I love Disney, and you know what else I love? I love Halloween.
I love Halloween too.
And you know what that means?
It's,
Let's just have a Disney dialogue about the Haunted Mansion, okay?
Okay.
Here we go.
Get ready to dig deep in today's Disney dialogue.
So, Aaron, Halloween is just around the corner, and of course, the attraction at the Disney parks that I think most people think of when you think Halloween would be the Haunted Mansion. So we're going to go on a little journey, talking a bit about the history. That just made me think of Epcot when I said journey, or when you said it, really. It was the journey.
Journey into Halloween.
Yeah, let's journey into Halloween. We're going to talk about a bit of the history of the Haunted Mansion as well as kind of the different versions that there are at the Disney parks around the world.
Yeah.
So, of course, we got to start with the original, the OG Haunted Mansion.
The OG Haunted Mansion. The OG HM.
Which would be Disneyland's, which has a very, 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 very long history. It's kind of unbelievable how far back it goes. It even goes...
Before Disneyland.
Before Disneyland.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't know, the original idea for a Disney theme park was to be across the street from the Walt Disney Studios on the plot of land that currently houses the Walt Disney Animation Building or the Roy E. Disney Animation Building, as well as the ABC Building. I forget how big it is, but it's small. And it was called Mickey Mouse Park. But even going all the way back then, there were always plans for a haunted house type of attraction because that was just kind of a staple when it came to amusement parks.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to have it there. So it goes all the way back then. But then fast forward a bunch of years, Disneyland opens in 1955. There is no Haunted Mansion. What has happened? Well, a lot has happened.
We'll find out.
Yes. Now, even in the Disneyland days, it went back to the early 50s. There were these Imagineers named Yale Gracie and Raleigh Crump.
Gracie?
Yale
Gracie?
Yeah.
It's Gracie Manor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yes and no. Yes.
Yes.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
People call it that. That was not like an official thing. Like fans made that an official thing.
Well, it was made official.
It kind of, sort of, yes.
In the movie.
In the movie, yeah. So, in any case, they worked on the effects of the attraction, which, let's face it, back then it's so interesting because even today, those effects hold up. Like, you give me that ballroom sequence, I'll take it over a projection any day.
Right. And things were different because these effects weren't going to be on kind of like a looping basis as much as they are now. Because it was initially supposed to be a walkthrough attraction.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit more of you're walking. They wanted it to be you and maybe a small group are walking through this abandoned haunted house, and these scares, these specters and spooks would actually scare you. It would actually be like they would etherealize as you walked by. But because of the capacity issues, they had to keep it on a running loop.
Yeah. I love these effects that were created. Now, I think there's a funny little story where they had their own shop over at Imagineering where they were creating these effects. And apparently they were so effective that the janitors refused to... They didn't want to go into the room at night after everybody left work. And so they requested that they leave the lights on, was it?
They asked that they would leave the lights on in the building and make sure that like none of the gags were running. And instead
They rigged it so that so basically when the janitor came into the room, the lights were on, but then they would shut off and all of the effects would start working.
Yeah.
And the next morning they found a broomstick alone on the floor, like the janitor had dropped it and left running out of the room. And from then on, the custodial would not clean that room. So that was probably a messy Imagineer's room. But one of the things I found interesting when doing research on this is that Harper Goff did a lot of the concept art for a lot of Disneyland stuff. And in some of the early Disneyland art, you can see concept art of the Haunted Mansion. And it looks a lot like the one you see in Paris today. I found that interesting. If you're not familiar with Paris, honestly, it looks like the Psycho House is the best way to describe it.
That's because it's Western.
Yeah.
And Harper Goff's early drawings were of the Midwest town, the Main Street USA, and it would be like a dark path would turn off the Main Street USA or the main street and go past the cemetery and an old church, and up on the hill would be this old house. So it makes sense that it had a Western vibe, and we'll get to this later, but that's one of the things I love about the Phantom Manor in Paris.
Phantom Manor in Paris is incredible, and
Yeah.
we will get to that.
Yeah.
Now Walt had a very different opinion of this. Walt did not want something ugly and decrepit in his park.
Right.
Which I understand, but at the same time, like, you're building a haunted house, sir.
Yeah.
A lot of the older Imagineers, I've heard them also, they don't like some of the newer haunted mansions for that reason. They're like, Walt wanted it this way. In this case, be like, Walt, I disagree with you personally. I don't know. Is that okay to say? Am I going to get struck by lightning?
Yes.
Some inspiration for the house also came from the Winchester Mystery House in Northern California. I've been there. Have you been there?
I have not.
They talk about it on the tour. They were certainly inspired. You can see in some of the rooms. But the sticking point for this, and a huge part of the reason why the Haunted Mansion took so long to become a real thing, is because of they weren't sure which direction to go in with the stories. What were some of your favorite stories that they talked about?
Well, I particularly like the sea captain. The sea captain who killed his nosy wife and then hung himself. I think one of the things that I like about the stories that they originally wanted to tell were they're much darker than what ended up being in there.
Yeah, and it's interesting though because there seem to be traces of all the stories.
Right.
So you mentioned the sea captain, the weather vane on that mansion at Disneyland is a sea captain ship.
Yeah.
So there seem to be like little nuggets of all the stories in there. I gotta say, in doing research for this, it's so kind of all over the place, and obviously it's such a beloved attraction, and I love the attraction, but I'm like, God, imagine if this, I don't know, does the fact that there were so many different opinions kind of affecting this, do you think that makes it better, or do you think the Haunted Mansion could be better if it came from a more linear place?
I think that the reason the Haunted Mansion is what it is because it was kind of a hodgepodge of ideas. Another idea that I really liked was Raleigh Crump was asked to develop some concepts for the Haunted Mansion, and this is when it was initially a walkthrough attraction, and he kind of turned it into the Museum of the Weird, which was more of like odd antiquities and weird effects from all over the world, and Walt actually he liked the idea. But he thought it would be better as like an attached restaurant concept.
Yeah.
So like Blue Bayou was for Pirates of the Caribbean. But sadly that has that is one that has some if you look at the concept art he did for that, you'll see traces of that in Haunted Mansion.
I'm trying to remember, did the famous bat stanchions come from there?
I think
a lot of the architectural details you definitely could see in Raleigh Crump's Museum of the Weird.
Definitely the chair with the face in it, in the hallway scene.
Yeah.
I think maybe the wallpaper was inspired by that as well.
Oh, that's so iconic.
Yeah.
The wallpaper. Very cool. I gotta say, I didn't realize this, but apparently at one point the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland storyline was going to be inspired by Sleepy Hollow.
Really?
Yeah, and I love this.
Interesting.
Yes, I'm kind of obsessed with this idea and want to see this come to fruition. Another thing, Walt was going to be the audio host of this attraction. I'm not saying I think that was necessarily a good idea for the attraction, but I want those audio tracks. I want those. Seriously, can you imagine?
Yeah.
Like, that's going to be some incredible stuff to hear.
I don't think he recorded it.
No, I believe he did. I feel like I've heard tiny little pieces of this before.
But he wasn't, I mean, another reason why it got delayed is because of the World's Fair and because he passed away.
Yeah, so 1964, a lot of the Imagineers went to work on the World's Fair, on Carousel of Progress, It's a Small World, Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, and the Ford Magic Skyway.
So I don't think that he would have. I don't think it was close enough to.
I heard he had recorded some stuff.
I don't think it was close enough to fruition for him to. There certainly would not have been a script at that point.
It was in development for a long time. I feel like stuff was produced for this and then thrown away a bunch of times. I feel like there's just a lot of stuff that was thrown away. But in any case, I forgot to mention with the whole Sleepy Hollow concept, a part of that was also going to be Dracula and Frankenstein and other classic monsters.
Interesting.
So yeah, it would have been very weird and interesting. But that's what it was going to be. So I don't know. Now, the exterior of the Haunted Mansion was finished in 1963, ladies and gentlemen. 1963. So this is before the World's Fair.
Yeah.
The attraction doesn't open until 67. That's 4 years of some of one of the greatest marketing tools, but also one of the most frustrating pieces in a theme park. I mean,
yeah, when's this going to open?
Today, I don't think you could, that would drive people absolutely crazy.
Could you imagine if they set up the gateways for Star Wars Land and
my goodness,
left it incomplete for 6 years?
Not incomplete, complete.
Oh yeah,
but then you just can't go in.
You can't go in.
They're like, oh goodness. Yeah. Now, one of the things that was interesting, Exitensio, who recently passed away, a Disney legend, he was responsible for writing the Yo Ho, Yo Ho, A Pirate's Life for Me song. He was also put in charge of coming in and writing, basically putting a through storyline for the Haunted Mansion.
Yeah.
And now that's not really an easy task at all, considering you had all of these different stories that have been part of it at one point, and also, is it scary? Isn't it scary? Which we'll get into at another point. And so that was a huge task for him. He also co-wrote the classic Grim Grinning Ghosts song.
Yeah, he wrote the lyrics for it.
So, I mean, and some of these craziest language ever. I can't remember any of it right now because, as
Cryptors Creek.
No, not even the lyrics.
What are you talking about?
Just the language used in I sense a disquieting metamorphosis. Like some of the language he used is so unique and interesting. I love it. I mean, that attraction simply wouldn't be what it is without Exitensio's script.
Not at all.
Now, you mentioned, Walt Disney passed away when they were in the middle of the process of creating the Haunted Mansion. So it left a huge problem of who gets the final say on this stuff, because Walt was always the leading man, and it took two men to replace Walt. Mark Davis and Claude Coates were both left in charge. Mark Davis very much had the opinion that the Haunted Mansion should be funny. It is at Disneyland. It needs to be funny for the family. Claude Coates was like, we're building the Haunted Mansion. This needs to be scary. And these days you can very much see both. The first half is very scary, really. It's very dark. And then the second half in the graveyard especially becomes very comedic. So that's where I say it's a little bit all over the place. And I don't know. I kind of want to see an all-dark Haunted Mansion, personally. I don't know.
Wouldn't be the same.
We kind of get that with Paris a little bit, not going to lie. But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. What else? Oh, fun fact I found out when doing research. So the hearse in front of the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland? Do you know why that was purchased originally in the 90s?
No.
It was purchased for a young Indiana Jones epic stunt spectacular. Yes.
Wait, like they were going to change Indiana Jones to young Indiana Jones?
Either that or they were going to put some sort of stunt show at Disneyland.
Interesting.
I don't know which, but I had never heard that before in my life. I thought that was very interesting. Another thing that got brought up is you mentioned it was going to be a walkthrough attraction, but capacity was an issue.
Yeah.
They said, we need to get people, this attraction needs to eat people, which is what every attraction needs to do.
Luckily.
So they created the Doom Buggy, or really this goes back to the World's Fair, with the Ford Magic Skyway as the inspiration. But the Doom Buggy came along, but one of the coolest concepts I read, Yale Gracie had an idea.
Yeah.
Before the Doom Buggy was confirmed, he wanted a boat ride through an old plantation house that was partially submerged in the bayou.
That'd be cool.
No, that'd be awesome. I want that haunted mansion. How incredible would that be?
Yeah.
Oh, that makes the Doom Buggy seem lame.
No.
But he was very much, they had just worked on Pirates of the Caribbean, so the whole boat ride system was kind of in their minds. And that would have been cool if, you started in Pirates, ended up at the Blue Bayou, and then, took, a turn into Haunted Mansion.
Just two rides in one.
Or they could just share the queue, perhaps, and I don't know, it would have been interesting. I love it. But for those of you who maybe have not ridden the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland, maybe we should give a description, a rundown of how it goes, shall we?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, well, they all start, most of them start with the classic stretching room, of course, which most people know at this point. The reasoning for this is actually because the Haunted Mansion attraction at Disneyland is outside of the park. And so the way that you get outside of the park is you have to go under the train tracks. So when this room is stretching, you're actually going underground in an elevator, and that's why that exists in the first place. That was one of those happy accidents. Can you imagine if that wasn't necessary? We wouldn't have a stretching room. Seriously, it's such an iconic part of the attraction now.
True.
And then we load our Doom Buggies, and first thing we see is that long hallway with the candlestick floating, the doors with all the knockers.
You skipped the portrait gallery.
You're part of the queue. I'm sorry. That's part of the queue. Go ahead. So after the stretching room, we exit the stretching room.
This is part of the Museum of the Weird concept. So you walk through after you get through the stretching room, and there are portraits on the wall. And with a flash of thunder, they mysteriously change appearance. So you've got the beautiful Greek woman turning into Medusa. You've got the ship sailing, turning into an old ghost ship, as well as the portrait of the young man who turns into an old decrepit man, which is used in the holding area for
Florida's?
For Florida's.
Yeah. And there's another one as well, the Catwoman.
Yes, the Catwoman, not DC Comics related. This is also a place where you see the...
Although, let's face it, if that were a Marvel comic, it would probably be worked in somehow at this point.
Maybe.
Yeah, probably.
This is also where the busts are that follow you as you walk by. It's funny because growing up going to Florida's Haunted Mansion, it's weird to see these different changes, or where they change the positioning of these iconic gags.
I prefer Florida's version of that gag, and I'll tell you why when we get to Florida.
Oh, yeah.
But the one thing I did want to say, do you remember the portrait changes before the flash of lightning? Because they didn't always change with the flash of lightning. They used to be a very slow, gradual change.
Oh.
And it's only in more recent years. Because the way that it works, and I love this, these years it must be projection of some sort.
Yeah.
But in the past, it's actually just layers of screens that would slightly shift. Mm-hmm. So you can't do that quickly in a flash of light. So there used to just be a very subtle change. I don't know which I prefer personally. Actually, I think they're both great.
Yeah.
So, now, correct me if I'm wrong, and we'll get to this, but doesn't Haunted Mansion Holiday use the old way? It's not a flash of lightning. It's a subtle change, but it's projection.
It's all projection. But the thing I love about Haunted Mansion Holiday is that Zero flies in through all the paintings. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So it's cool. So I'm sorry. So after that, you load the Doom Buggy,
right? And
I've never been a huge fan of this area because it's just black. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's very underdressed.
Way underdressed.
Yeah.
And when we get to Paris, it really puts this area to shame. But as we turn the corner, we see that hallway with the candlestick floating down it. This is very much the Claude Coates section that's very scary.
Yeah.
We see a coffin with somebody trying to get out, who I believe is Exitencio.
It is, yeah.
It's Exitencio.
Let me out of here! Let me out!
Which is, I will say, that's a little funny.
Yeah.
Like, they definitely added a touch
yeah.
of humor in that part, because
Yeah.
it's a little ridiculous. And then you're going down the hallway backwards with all the door knockers going
Yeah.
off. And then you get to that famous clock with the 13 clocks spinning. What I love about this, so there's this great silhouette effect of like a hand going past this clock.
The claw.
If you look up behind or just up to the right, it is such old-fashioned technology. I love that like this hasn't been updated.
It's just like 4 cardboard arms.
It really
on
is.
a motor, and they just like pass in front of a light.
It's unbelievable that this technology is still what's used.
Yeah.
Like, this blows my mind.
I got stopped there one time and just like looked at it for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Beyond that, we had
Madame Leota.
Madame Leota's room.
You get the seance room with all the instruments, and I always Disney attractions are great about stereo sound, or not stereo sound, but surround sound, and like positioning sounds where they should be. Mm-hmm. And I always love when she calls out like, the ring of a bell. By
ringing a bell.
And the bell sound comes out from right where the bell is.
Yeah.
And they just do such a great job with that. Quick aside, they recently changed over. We're in October. They just changed over for Haunted Mansion Holiday. It was the first time I haven't seen Leota working.
Okay. Oh.
And because there's a projector inside of her head, spoilers, everybody, that like reset the projector, like was projecting onto the face portion of her.
What was it? What did it say?
Well, like when a projector, like when it's not getting signal or whatever, or when the computer is not sending a signal, it's like, no signal coming through. So that was projected onto the inside of the face. Just a weird.
That is weird.
Usually it's a great effect. And I love the fact that in Disneyland they added the floating crystal ball.
Yes.
Whereas it used to be stationary, and it's still stationary in Florida, but
have they not changed that yet?
I don't think the last time I went, I think I was kind of like taken aback, like, really? Like it's just sitting there.
Yeah.
But I love that effect of her floating around, and especially at Christmas time when they change it to the like.
I'm not a big fan of the giant ornament.
You don't like the giant?
Yeah, I'm a bigger fan of the crystal ball.
I also am a really big fan of the possessed nutcracker that says all her lines.
Yeah. I really, now there's something going on in this room. A lot of people don't notice it, and it only happens sometimes. So basically, when you're at the furthest point in the room, it's like a semicircle, so you're looking across at where you entered.
Yeah.
And on that back wall, have you ever noticed like the light swirls on the wall?
Yeah, sometimes it's
Sometimes
it reveals like a skeletal face.
it's the Hatbox Ghost.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. It's you saw it. Cool.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't see this.
Well, it doesn't work.
It doesn't
a lot of the
always
time.
happen.
Yeah.
But if you get the right pattern of the light swirl, you will see the Hatbox Ghost on the wall.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool. But then you move past. So at this point, we really haven't seen any ghosts. We've seen floating candlesticks and such. But Madame Leota has now brought these ghosts into view. And so we go into the Grand Ballroom, which I think is undeniably like the greatest room in the Haunted Mansion, and you're above on a balcony looking below at all the ballroom dancers and a party going on.
Yeah.
In Disneyland's version,
this is funny. I would say there's a lot of
think
funny.
so?
Yeah, I
guess there's some gags
the
going
drunk
on at the
guy.
table. Yeah. You know why they made them drunk?
Why?
Because they couldn't, back in the 60s this was, they couldn't get the animatronics to stop like swaying.
Oh.
Whenever they wanted to put any sort of speed into them, they would sway. These are complex machines. And so they're like, well, let's just make them drunk, and then it'll look like it's part of the show. Now, the organ in this scene, as well as is from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the film, only in the Disneyland version, of course.
Yes.
But this is such a great room. I love the gag of the two paintings on the wall of the dueling shooters facing away from each other, and the ghosts appear and turn toward each other and shoot. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff. There's a hidden Mickey on the table of the three plates forming Mickey Mouse. It's a great sequence. I love it.
And the grandmother, I believe, is the grandmother from
the Carousel of Progress. It's true.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fun little things in this scene. It's a great scene.
Yeah.
And I want to have a dinner party down there.
Oh, I think they have in the past. I think that there was some kind of like exclusive tour where they like
must be so ugly though.
Yeah.
If you're down in that dining room
and you're like staring,
you're just looking at like the animatronics that are underneath you as you ride, underneath and above.
Now this is I just want to point out there was one really cool thing because this is the gag that they're using in there, and it's the only time they use that gag, I think, is Pepper's ghost, which
it's the they use the opposite of Pepper's ghost for the end with the hitchhiking ghost. I'll explain when we get to it.
Gotcha. Because it's a one-way mirror, right?
I'll explain when we get to it.
It's a one-way mirror.
It's you're seeing, so basically the way in the ballroom sequence, you're looking at reflections of the animatronics. In the hitchhiking ghost, you're looking at a reflection of yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But this is they project light onto the animatronics down below where you're actually crossing we're actually going above the ballroom sequence. And there are massive panes of glass. Again, spoilers for everybody. There are massive panes of glass in each of the columns, in each of the sets of columns in front of you for the ballroom scene. And they're basically just like flicking on the lights and then turning off the lights.
Yeah.
And if you look really closely on either the third or fourth pane of glass, you can see a gunshot or a bullet hole that's covered up by a little spider.
Yeah.
And once you see it, you'll never unsee it. So you're welcome.
So you're welcome for that. Yeah, they made it into a spider. They actually like freaked out because they're. I don't think it was a bullet. I thought something was thrown at it.
No.
It was a bullet?
Somebody shot it.
Stupid.
And the panes of glass are so large that it is an incredible feat to replace these panes of glass.
They were literally trying to figure out how to do this, and they decided we have to take the roof off and fly in a new piece of glass. And that's when some young Imagineer, I don't know who it was, but somebody, low on the rungs was like, let's just make it into a spider web. And it's totally effective. You would never in a million years know that unless somebody told you.
Why would there be a spider
why
web
wouldn't there be?
In the middle of space?
It's a haunted mansion.
Yeah, but there's no...
Those spiders, listen.
It's not connected
it was from
to anything.
one
It's
column
just...
to another. Don't even.
No.
Nope, it makes total sense.
Not at all.
Anyway, after the ballroom, we head into the attic. They have a very good effect of... They have portraits of the bride and the husband all over the attic, and there's a great effect of... There's like a lighting change, and the head disappears.
Yeah.
I don't even know... I don't think those are projection, because they look too good to be projection.
It's probably some kind of screen or...
But it seems like there's definitely a lighting change. So you're in the attic, and that's when we now witness the Hatbox Ghost in the attic.
Well, you just skipped over like two ghosts.
Yeah, I mean, it's
one of my favorite ghosts
piano
in
ghost?
the attic. The piano ghost is awesome.
I do love that. That wasn't... that's a fairly new
2003 or it probably like 20 years ago. But that's such a great... And it's probably just a projection of a silhouette of a guy banging out the chords of a... is it a funeral march?
It's a wedding. It's the wedding march.
It's the wedding march
in a very nasty key.
Yeah, but I think that because the same gag is used in Florida, but it's much that's simpler.
That's from above. So
it's just like another cardboard cutout.
Is it that simple?
It's just a simple. It's not a projection. I don't think it's just like a light.
I thought it was, but I just like the angle. In the attic, it's off to your left, and you're looking at this piano at a weird angle, and the silhouette's hitting it just perfectly.
Yeah.
In Florida, it's like the silhouette's from above. It still works, but it's cooler at Disneyland.
I know you want to skip the bride.
Oh God, the bride's terrible.
Yeah,
Why?
she's terrible.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you gotta mention the terrible.
Yeah, there's a bride there, and like with crazy terrible projection.
Now, was it you told me that was like the dummy version that they used.
I had heard that.
And then they just like,
They
well,
never
we're
changed
not
it.
going to change it.
I had heard that before. In recent years, the Hatbox Ghost, the mysterious Hatbox Ghost that had, the rumors are that it was, I believe it was confirmed by Tony Baxter that he was there for probably about 2 weeks when the attraction first opened, and they could never get it to work the way they wanted, where the skeletons had disappeared on the body and ended up in the Hatbox.
Right.
Technology just wasn't there in 1967. And in the 21st century, they've got a cool new Hatbox Ghost that hangs out right outside the attic window as you're falling back to your death into the cemetery.
Yeah.
With
Some complicated geography there.
I gotta tell you, that was the scariest moment for me. And
When
you
go backwards?
Yep,
Oh,
going
really?
back. I always thought, we're just gonna start like rolling backwards. Like I just had no faith in the system, and I was like, oh no, we're gonna die. We're gonna die and crash. That scared the crap out of me as a kid. That was the scariest part.
This is the point where you see the only human
Yeah,
in the entire attraction.
it's true.
The
Grave
grave
digger.
digger?
Yeah.
Yeah. And his little dog.
Yeah, his
frightened
emaciated dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such an iconic holding the lantern up. Can't believe what he's seeing.
Yeah.
Now this is very much the Mark Davis section of the attraction with a lot of comedy. Now here's something interesting. This is the first time we're really seeing. Am I correct in saying this? Really seeing audio animatronic figures, because up until this point it was a lot of
I think it's
reflections and stuff.
Well, and even in the ballroom, I think most of them are like the dancers are just stationary
That's
figures
true.
on spinning
yeah.
pedestals.
So ones in the table have a bit more action.
A little bit, yeah.
But these are not reflections. These are audio animatronic figures or
Right.
robots behind scrims.
Yeah.
So it definitely has a different look to it.
One thing I love about them is that they skinned the audio animatronics with transparent skin.
Yeah.
So literally, you can see, I mean, it's very obscured, but you can see the inner workings of the animatronics.
Yeah, I never bought this effect as much, to be honest. I love like the ballroom stuff. I kind of wish we had that through the entire attraction.
Right,
I get
well-
it. It's not as feasible.
Well, this was part of the challenge of making this a ride through attraction
Yeah.
as opposed to a walkthrough. And that's honestly, that was a big point of contention for the Imagineers who like spent so much time on developing those effects. And then it was like, well, we'll just put some audio animatronics in there and call it a day.
Yeah.
So
Now, there's a lot of stuff going on in the cemetery, but I think one of the more famous things are the singing busts.
Yeah.
Which, from what I understand, is the first use of map projection at a Disney park.
nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
They have the busts in the cemetery. One of them's knocked over, and you see these different faces on it, and they're singing Grim Grinning Ghosts.
Have you ever seen the footage of those actors?
No.
No?
No.
So what they had to do, because this was early days, they limited technology, they had to put it was a barbershop, or it was a group. It was an actual singing group, and they had to put their heads in vice grips
Oh, so that they would
to keep them stationary. And so one of the reasons that they're like, I heard them talking about how one of the reasons they're making so many faces is because they're like, they really were in kind of discomfort. And so one of the ways they like got around that was just like being
Stretching
silly
their face,
and like acting. And if you have the time, if you like take the time to look, like they really are making the most ridiculous faces, especially when they're not singing. It's just totally.
That's always that spot, or the ballroom is always where I'm like, if
you get stuck.
The unfortunate reality is
Yeah.
you will not get through the Haunted Mansion without the Doom Buggy stopping at some point due to handicapped loading. I can't believe they still haven't figured out how to change that in the 21st century, but I digress. But I always hope, if I'm going to get stuck somewhere, ballroom or in front of the busts would be a good thing. Beyond the bust, we continue through the cemetery, lots of other antics going on. But then we hit the hitchhiking ghosts.
Oh, yeah.
Who, of course, want to go home with you. So this is the point where you pass a mirror now, and you're looking through the mirror at an animatronic ghost, kind of like what you were looking at in the cemetery, and you're seeing a reflection of yourself. So it looks like a ghost is sitting with you in your Doom Buggy, but it's actually, the reality is you're actually seeing a reflection of yourself behind a mirror with a ghost.
No.
Yes.
It's a one-way mirror.
Yeah.
and they're lit behind the mirror.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And they have to be perfectly synced.
Have you ever seen that with the lights on? Because that's weird.
Yeah, because they're only like this up.
They basically have like the thing that's so cool about a lot of these attractions, if you ever break down on them and the lights turn on, you will see how like handmade a lot of them is. And I did break down right at that place at one point. And you just look at this, like, literally looks like just black cloth that somebody ripped and, like, duct taped to something to hide the bottom portion of it. And it's just on this track, and it's just constantly looping in a circle, timed perfectly with the, not the Omnimover, it is Omnimover. What's it called, though? The
Doom Buggies.
The Doom Buggy.
Yeah.
It just cracked me up. I'm like, wow, this looks so homemade at this point.
Yep.
Cracks me up. But yeah, and then that's the end. You got the little, I never understood the little bride. Why is she a tiny bride?
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's like Wayne Zelinsky got in there. I did it. I worked in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids into a Haunted Mansion episode.
Seamless.
Sweet.
Nice.
I'm amazing. You're welcome for that, ladies and gentlemen. And that is the Haunted Mansion that we know and love today, and really hasn't changed a ton through the years. Nope. Definitely added things here and there, but a lot of the same older technology. I will say, in fact, I think we talked about this on an older episode. There was a vinyl record that made the attraction very famous. And it made the Hatbox Ghost really famous as well, because even though, as I mentioned before, he was only around for a couple of weeks, he lived on for a long time through this vinyl record. And we had said, I think it was with you. We were talking about,
I don't think
maybe it wasn't with you then. It came out in 1969. So this vinyl record came out 2 years after the Haunted Mansion opened. But then in 1971, with the opening of the Magic Kingdom in Walt Disney World, we got another Haunted Mansion.
That's right.
Now, tell us about this one. What are some of the differences?
So the main differences now, are that one, before you even get into the attraction, it's got an amazing interactive queue.
Well, okay. Yeah. Sorry, I was just talking about the exterior of the building.
Oh, yeah, the exterior of the building's
it looks
great.
Total. Now, do you prefer it? I don't know if I think I prefer it because it's scarier.
It's almost more iconic to me because it's such a unique looking building, and it actually has that appearance of being the house on the hill above the town.
Okay.
Whereas our Haunted Mansion it's kind of it's in New Orleans Square. It definitely fits. Both of them fit great into their environments, but this one always. And I mean, part of it could be the fact that I didn't see Disneyland's until I was a grown man, and this one was the one that
You're not a man.
I'm not a man. This one was the one that I saw as a kid, and so it definitely had that foreboding. Even before you get into the queue, they have sound cues and stuff outside of the queue that
draw you in,
really make it a haunted house experience.
Yeah.
And so the outside is beautiful.
By the way, I should mention it's like a Gothic manor style, if you're not familiar. And Disneyland's is a Southern plantation. I believe Disneyland's is the only one that keeps with that whole we want it to be clean and pretty. Like Walt wanted. The Gothic style,
they're all clean on the outside.
Well, Paris definitely isn't, and no, it's a rundown house.
Oh.
Yeah, and so I would say the Gothic one, I mean, it lends itself to being scary because it's made out of stone, but also I know the lawn is not kept.
Well, most of
trimmed
the
or
plants
anything.
are dead.
Yeah, so it has it. Walt wouldn't have wanted it that way,
right?
But they were like, screw Walt.
Okay.
The Imagineers said that, quote. That's not true.
No.
But in any case, very Gothic style, very different.
They added in this interactive queue with like a murder mystery, and they had a lot of references to some of the original stories. There's a tomb for a sea captain that spits water out at you. Just really fun stuff. I know it's such a shame because this is one of those attractions that if you have a fast pass for, you're going to skip the interactive queue.
Yeah.
So, and even if you're in the interactive queue, you're usually there so long that you don't want to be in the interactive queue anymore. But other than that, once you get in, the stretching room is the same. Although it's not an elevator, it's
Yeah.
just
If you went underground in Florida, you would sink.
yes.
So the room is stretching up, and I believe it's a lot smaller because of that. I feel like the ceiling feels so much higher when the room's stretching in Disneyland
Right.
than at Walt Disney World.
Well, they just go. It goes for because one thing I noticed in Disneyland, and this is like one of those technical aspects that like my eye is drawn towards, is in Florida the portraits stretch and that's it. In Disneyland, the portrait stretches and then the rooms continues to stretch because it has a final destination.
Yeah.
But after that, when you get out of the queue or when you get out of the stretching room, it's basically the same, right? There's no portrait hall.
Yeah, so a lot of some of the stuff that's in the queue at Disneyland really is part of the ride now. So you ride through the portrait hall instead of walking by it. The busts that we're speaking of that follow you,
The library,
are in the library, which is a beautiful scene.
Yeah.
And the thing that I like about this is when you see the busts in the queue at Disneyland, you can everybody's, oh my God, he's looking at me. So you move back and forth and see if it still follows you. And if you go too far, you can see like it cuts off half the face because the way that the effects work is it's actually not protruded out toward you. It's sunken in.
Right.
So if you see it at the right angle, you can see what's really going on. Because of the placement and because of their controlling of your placement as well in the Florida attraction, you really never lose that effect, I feel like. So it's just done so much better there. After that, they have this stairway hallway.
Yeah.
Now, it used to be just like a spider room, I believe, which it still is in Tokyo, I think. But now it's like all these upside down stairways with these footprints walking on it.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite rooms.
It's like an M.C. Escher drawing.
Sure.
You don't know who M.C. Escher is?
I don't, but I know the drawing you're speaking of.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It's literally like an infinite room of staircases.
It's awesome.
Now, just before that is their piano
piano
player.
guy.
And then
Their piano man.
their piano man.
Oh my God, if it were like Billy Joel piano man, that'd be great.
Yeah,
You're going through the Haunted Mansion. I said, son, can you play me a melody?
That's Florida's holiday overlay next year.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure how it goes. Sorry, I lost my mind.
Okay. After that, it goes. After that, it starts hitting a lot of the same.
It's a lot
beats.
of the same notes as Disneyland's version. One big change, though, is at the end, the hitchhikers are digital now at Walt Disney World. People have mixed feelings about this. I really like it.
Well, the actual where they're standing hitchhiking,
I think they're the same.
they're back, right? I think they updated them. I think that they changed that scene a little bit.
But they're animatronics.
They're animatronics, yeah. But the mirror, yeah.
Yeah, so in the mirror part now, instead of seeing through the glass, you're seeing a projected image, and they'll cut off your head, which is fun, and then like hold your head up, and they just do all,
Which is fun.
It is fun. I like it.
Yeah.
But here's the cool thing: first time I experienced this was years ago. I hadn't heard about this change. This was like before Twitter and all that stuff. And I went and I was like, whoa, because he cut off my head. And I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
That was incredible.
Yeah, I like those effects a lot. I think I don't think they changed the ride makeup that much. That
the tough thing when updating the Haunted Mansion with new technology is it's just the juxtaposition of very old-fashioned Imagineering animatronics with brand new spanking.
It's very noticeable.
It's noticeable. So it's always this a bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
One thing, a fun fact about the Magic Kingdom's Haunted Mansion is this attraction was actually ready 6 months before the opening of Walt Disney World.
Wow.
Now, it opened on October 1st, 1971 with the rest of the park, but it was just sitting there ready, and the reasoning for that is because it took so long for it to be finished at Disneyland that they were already in planning for Walt Disney World, and they built 2 of everything.
Oh,
yeah. So
interesting.
So they basically just...
I was going to say, they just duplicated everything, but
that's exactly what they did. Yep, it's exactly what they did. Now, after that, I said that was October 1st, 1971. We hopped to Tokyo Disneyland, April 15th, 1983, when that park opened. Now, the interesting thing about this one, we forgot to mention that the Florida version is actually in Liberty Square.
Right.
That's where the home of it is. And the home of Disneyland's, of course, is New Orleans Square. It's in Fantasyland in Tokyo.
Yeah,
which is interesting. The reasoning for this behind it is, well, number one, they needed to find a place to put it, but also ghost tales are considered fairy tales in Tokyo, apparently.
Oh.
So that's the story the Imagineers tell.
Also, it would be weird if they had a Liberty Square and or
Oh, they should not have
New
a Liberty
Orleans Square.
That wouldn't make sense. But the look of it is Dutch Gothic, very much like the Magic Kingdom. It's a very similar ride to the Magic Kingdom. They do not have the updated stair room. It's just like the spider room as well now. One thing I did notice as I was watching a video of Tokyo's is in the door hallway, there was smoke coming out from behind one of the doors. If you know anything about me as a kid, I'm obsessed with theatrical fog, like obsessed with it.
He has a fogger in his room.
I have multiple fog machines now, but literally the first large purchase I ever made as a kid was a fog machine.
Wow.
I got a paper out as a kid and saved up enough money to buy a fog machine back before it was like normal. Now you can go to like CVS on Halloween and buy a fog machine. Back in the 80s, this was not like a normal thing.
You know what's
Actually,
weird?
I guess it was the 90s.
Is I don't think I knew about fog machines.
Oh.
But I always wanted to buy dry ice.
Yes, dry ice is
I always
cool.
wanted to buy dry ice
Yeah.
and just put it in water and like.
No, seriously, I saved up over $200 because they didn't make like crappy $30 fog machines.
well,
like
and then you had
today.
to buy the fluid. That's
Which-
got like a whole.
Okay, here we go. Tangent. My biggest fear was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep affording to buy fog fluid. I thought it was like going to go away so fast. That stuff lasts forever. So that's the good news. So if you want to buy yourself a fog machine, don't worry about replenishing.
Not if you're on a movie set. It doesn't last forever.
Dude,
that goes quick.
my house Halloween, I used a lot of fog and we're good.
Every day, was it just like, man, get home? Like,
It would not
flip
be
on the fog
abnormal for me to
machine.
just put on the fog machine. I still have that original fog machine. It's in Massachusetts.
All right.
I love fog. There is fog in Tokyo's Haunted Mansion, and there's
cool.
And there's no fog that I can think of in any other Haunted Mansion, which is so weird. Certainly not Disneyland's or Magic Kingdom's.
No.
That's such a weird concept to think of, like, it's a why is there no fog? There's fog in so many attractions at the parks.
Well, you know what? Even like I think one of the reasons why is because it's really hard to control when it gets out there. So if you used it in some of those Haunted Mansions, because think about the pirate ship scene.
Yeah.
It's such a big open space, and while the fog is great, like sometimes you go in there, there's like no fog. Sometimes you go in there and it's like, oh, that is maybe not for you because you love.
I love it. I breathe it in.
Sometimes you go in there and it's like, this is too much fog.
I'm not lying. One of my favorite things about going to all these haunts this time of year is me breathing in fog.
That's not good for you.
That's fine. It's water-based. If they sold that as a scented candle, I would own it. I love it. Anyway, let's get back to the Haunted Mansion.
Right.
Thank you, Tokyo, for the fog. Then in April 12th, 1992, with the opening of Euro Disneyland, now Disneyland Paris, we had Phantom Manor.
Yeah.
Which I have experienced in person. Have you?
Yeah.
Okay. This is my favorite Haunted Mansion.
It's so freaking weird.
Do you think it's weird?
It's so weird.
I think it's stunning.
One thing I love about this is that theirs is in Frontierland.
Yes.
And they really have a cool continuity within their Frontierland. So their Phantom Manor, their take on Haunted Mansion, ties in with the story of Big Thunder Mesa, which is their like Big Thunder Railroad ride. But yeah, it's just because it's Old West, but it's not. The whole area is like an Old West ghost town, as opposed to our Frontierland, which is very much supposed to be like a new up and coming plot of land on the Old West.
Because Walt doesn't want things to look bad.
That's true.
So, but yeah, so the story here is a family died in an earthquake. Okay, whatever. This is Tony Baxter's baby, this Phantom Manor. And oh my goodness, I love it. The best thing about this, let me mention the exterior. I mentioned a little bit earlier that this very much to me looks like the Psycho House. The Psycho House is based on a painting by Edward Hopper called House by the Railroad. It's the same thing. But this attraction has one of the best attraction musical scores of all time. This attraction takes the Grim Grinning Ghost theme and writes like a movie score around it. It's amazing. The music is by John Debney. He is a film composer. I think he did the music for I Know What You Did Last Summer and some other films as well. I can't even if you are unfamiliar with Phantom Manor's music, just go to YouTube, type in Phantom Manor music or watch a ride through. It's like one of the most beautiful, it's almost like a musical theater score. It's so good. Like, it's even better than a film score.
It is really good.
It's phenomenal.
Speaking of a film score, it's got a actual plot line.
Yes.
From beginning to end.
Which is so nice.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, the plot is very weird.
There's a bride. There's a bride for sure.
Well, they use the bride, and the bride is kind of she's the through line.
You hear her singing through the attraction. In the grand ballroom, there's a beautiful scene where she'll be on a staircase in the grand ballroom, and all that the activity we're familiar with is happening around her, and then all of that will disappear, and she'll be alone in the room. And it's just so stunningly beautiful, and it goes back and forth. We're jumping ahead a little bit here, but that's all right. One of the things I loved about this that only lasted a couple weeks. This is like this version's Hatbox Ghost. Vincent Price.
Oh, yes.
Vincent Price was the ghost host. If you don't know Vincent Price, you might know him from either Edward Scissorhands, the old man, or Thriller, the guy who narrates it or raps. I think the official credit is a rapper.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh.
And he has that famous laugh. And so how this came about was when they were testing or, working on this, the concept of this attraction, they used Vincent Price's laugh from the end of Thriller. And they're like, we really like this. Let's get Vincent Price to do the narration and be the ghost host, essentially. And he did. And there's a recording out there of him. I've got it on my iTunes. It's incredible to listen to.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the French wanted a French ghost host. So it only lasted a short period of time. He was replaced by a French actor. But it's phenomenal to listen to if you get the chance. Highly, highly suggest it. You still will hear his laugh throughout the attraction, which is cool.
Well, his laugh is kind of the skeleton, like the death skeleton, right?
I don't know. So, yes.
The one that you that keeps popping up.
Yeah, so it's fantastic. Now, we mentioned a little earlier how we're disappointed with the loading area of the Doom Buggy for Disneyland's. Well, not for Phantom Manor, because there is a grand staircase that is just almost Beauty and the Beast-esque. Yeah. Like, it's so beautiful. That's where you load. And the first turn you take is where you meet the singing bride. And then we see some of the more classic things of, like, the hallway with the candlestick floating. But then the bride will appear, and she's the one holding the candlestick. What did I say, handlestick? Candlestick. What else was there? There's the ballroom that we all know, the fireplace. I guess the end is really...
That's what stands out to me.
Yeah. Toward the end, when you're exiting the attic sequence...
Which is one of the few... It's the only one that I actually... Like, the geography of falling out of the attic window makes sense. You really get an idea of where where you're coming out of the house at. And I think you're actually the bride fell out of the window, right?
Yes, that's how.
Or she threw herself out of the window, and it sticks out in my mind because you start you basically go underground. So you fall out of the window. You're in the cemetery. And then you basically get submerged into the ground. There's coffins next to you and skeletons, and then you end up in the underworld in this really weird version of Grim Grinning Ghosts that.
In like a Western underworld.
Well, you're in like the Western town, but it's like all these ghosts and skeletons. Like
not many ghosts though. That's the cool thing.
Are they mostly skeletons?
They're mostly skeletons, which I kind of loved because, as I mentioned before, I'm not crazy about like the ghost animatronics at Disneyland as much as the Pepper's Ghost effect. The cool thing is that this Phantom Manor version doesn't really have those. I use silly
There's ghosts.
I use silly for lack of a better term.
They're not silly, but there's quite a few.
But they're like human, like they're not like see-through ghosts.
Right. Well, I think because you're in the underworld, there's more of this like.
There's a ton of skeletons.
Tangibility.
There's so many skeletons that honestly, if you showed somebody like a 5-second clip of it and said, "What attraction is this?" A lot of people would say this is Pirates of the Caribbean. There's that many skeletons.
Yeah.
So it's very different.
But part of what's so jarring for me is that they play Grim Grinning Ghosts over this, but at no point am I like, why am I listening to a silly, fun ghost song when this is so morbid and dark?
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, there's some really good effects.
Well, they're playing it when like in a saloon style as you're going by a saloon. So there's a lot of different variations.
There's
of
like
the musical
one
theme.
part where like somebody's playing skulls, like they're drumming on skulls, and it's like to the beat of Grim Grinning Ghosts. It's very bizarre.
It's fantastic.
It's bizarre.
But we lose some classic stuff here. We don't have the old man with the dog. We don't even have hitchhiking ghosts. At the end, you basically see like a skeleton figure above the doom buggy, like grabbing onto you.
Yeah, he's all over the place too.
So Phantom Manor's phenomenal. Go watch it on YouTube, is all I will say about that. Love it. My favorite. And then in 2001, we got Haunted Mansion Holiday, which we've touched on a little bit. This is where Jack Skellington and the gang from The Nightmare Before Christmas take over the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland. It's very cool.
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
It's my favorite.
And then, now, I don't really consider this a Haunted Mansion, but they do put it in the same family. Mystic Manor at Hong Kong, which opened on May 17th, 2013. Do you think of this as the Haunted Mansion? I guess it's... I don't know. It's not even an equivalent. Like, it's such a different ride system, such a different story.
I wouldn't consider it a haunted mansion. Well, it's certainly not a haunted mansion because there's no part of it that's actually haunted.
Yeah.
I do really like that this has been, I really like the use of the trackless system.
Yep.
This was the first trackless. This or the Pooh's Honey Hunt was the first one. But this was one of the first trackless rides. And I like that they tie in the story of the, is it the Society of Explorers and Adventurers from Tokyo Disney Sea? It's great.
It looks cool. I've never experienced it in person. Some very cool effects.
Yes.
With lasers and projection and...
I can see kind of why they tie it into the...
It's because they don't have a Haunted Mansion in that park. So this is the closest thing we got to a Haunted Mansion. So I guess that makes sense.
Well, and that ties into what are the reasoning behind Shanghai not having a Haunted Mansion is because Hong Kong, being part of China, it's not the Chinese view spirits very respectfully. Yeah. And so seeing it kind of mocked in a attraction would not be appropriate in that environment.
Yeah, some of the effects that you'll see in Mystic Manor are crazy, though. With there is a cool Medusa moment, which is kind of a throwback to the Haunted Mansion, in my opinion, where you see a painting on a wall that really comes to life through projection and also moving parts.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. Just watching the video, I couldn't figure out exactly what they were doing.
Yeah, and then there's parts where like walls collapse, and
it's wild.
There's some crazy magic going on here. I mean, it's heavily done through projection, but it's really wild.
And it's got a
cute little monkey.
Yeah, it's got a cute little monkey, and it's got an awesome soundtrack by Danny Elfman. So.
Oh, is it? I didn't realize that. Oh, that's cool.
It sounds very much like a Danny Elfman song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to check that out in person. I know you hear a lot of crap about Hong Kong Disneyland. I'm kind of like, that's reason enough to go in my book.
Yeah, absolutely.
It looks cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a lot of Haunted Mansion talk. Anything else you want to add before we move on here?
I will just say I'm surprised that they didn't open a Mystic Manor in Shanghai. Maybe because it's so close, they didn't want to copy the idea.
Maybe eventually we'll get it. Maybe it'll be an expansion.
Something.
I don't know. But I kind of like that it's its own little thing in Hong Kong. Gives you a reason to go to Hong Kong. Anyway, guys, I think that means it's trivia time! Hey, folks, and welcome to Trivia Time. Today I have Corey on the show from No Midnight Podcast, a very zany podcast out there, all about Disney and theme parks in general. Welcome to the show, Corey.
Zany? I haven't heard that one yet. I like it. Hi.
It's a wild show. It's a lot of fun.
It can be a little zany.
And you guys just expanded to 3 shows a week, I believe, right?
We did, yeah. We were doing just a long form Wednesday night show, and we decided to move our news and rumors segment to its own show, which would make it a little easier to put, as a video. Wednesday night is more of a kind of a discussion. It's called Happy Hour Live, and then on Saturdays we're going to start doing special features, serials, documentaries, interviews, cool stuff like that.
Very nice. And all of that can be found at nomidnightpodcast.com. So definitely go and check that out. But today we're here to talk about some trivia, and our trivia segment is Disney on Ice. A little bit random, but the thing I love about Disney on Ice is the fact that if you're not living near one of the parks, which I know we're very spoiled and get to go often, but a lot of people don't. And I love the fact that Disney on Ice tours the country and the world, and people get to experience Disney everywhere. So that's today's trivia segment subject. So do you want to hit me with a question first, or shall I hit you?
I can go first. That's fine.
Let's hear it.
Let's see. Let's do this. Walt Disney World's on Ice, which is what Disney on Ice was called before it changed to Disney on Ice, made its international debut in 1987, bringing which show to Japan?
1987. Is it based on like a movie, or is it one of their ridiculous mix of things?
I would say neither, but if I had to pick, ridiculous mix of things.
Okay. So 1987, that's not an anniversary year. I mean, it's probably got some ridiculous name like Imagesplosion or something like that.
No, it's not.
Is it named after? It's not named after a movie.
No.
Is it? You're looking for the title of the show, yeah?
Yeah. Do you want a hint?
Sure, let's get a hint.
It celebrates a character.
I was going to say like Mickey's World of Wonder. Oh, 87, let's think. Is there an anniversary birthday? 87, Mickey's 1923. 28. So it wouldn't be that. Is it, let's go with Goofy. Goofy's birthday party.
Oh, yeah. No.
No, is it Donald?
It is. It's called Happy Birthday, Donald.
Happy birthday, Donald. How old was Donald in 1987?
I have literally no idea.
Okay. Trying to think what it would be. Okay, that makes sense. I remember, when I was a kid, I remember even the parks were doing I remember like a birthday parade for Donald, I believe, at the Magic Kingdom.
I was 5, so I mean, I probably don't have great memories of that.
So was I. We're the same age.
There we go.
No, we're both old.
Rocking it.
Yeah. 80s kids. Yeah.
You know, we're technically considered millennials, though.
What?
1982 babies are considered millennials. We're old millennials, but we're millennials.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, that's a thing.
That seems a little weird. I do not personally think of myself as a millennial, but I guess I'll take it if it makes me sound younger. I'll be like, yeah, I'm a millennial. It's cool.
Hey, if you have an iPhone and a podcast, I hate to break it to you, you are a millennial.
Okay, well, there we go. I'm a millennial. So my trivia question for you is simply and not so simply. I would not be able to answer this, so I'll just give you that. But currently, I'll do this in 2 parts, because one of these parts you can guess. How many current shows does Disney on Ice currently have on the road?
Oh, man. I want to say it's like 6.
It's close.
5?
5.
Okay.
They currently have 5 shows on the road. Do you know the names of any of them? One of them's pretty obvious. It's based on a movie.
Well, Disney on Ice, there's Frozen. There's Disney on Ice, Dare to Dream.
Okay, wow, you've already done better than I would.
There's Disney on Ice, Worlds of Enchantment.
That one is not on the road currently.
Oh, okay.
At least not according to the
It was,
okay.
So I get half a point for that.
Half a point.
Man. I think that's all the ones I can name. That's all the ones I've seen in the last year.
Okay, Follow Your Heart, which has some inside-out characters, so I guess that makes it a little unique. Dream Big.
Okay.
Reach for the Stars. And then, as you said, Dare to Dream, which has Moana in it. These shows, after watching like the videos of the ads online, they're all the same thing. Aside from Frozen, which is, obviously the story of Frozen, like they're all the same characters.
Yeah, and Frozen's in every single one of them too. Like
yes,
they have, they do the shows in tracks, just like, Fantasmic has, its individual scenes, and every single show has the Frozen track. Every single one of them.
Yeah, it's very weird. It seems to be very, very similar shows that tour the country with different names, just so that like people can be like, oh, I haven't seen that one. I should get tickets to it. So it's interesting. But I can't believe there's that many on the road at the same time.
Well, they debut a new one every year.
Oh, is that how? I just remember
and then one falls off the back, but they keep the same amount on the road, but a new one has to. I think it's part of their contract with Disney. They have to debut a new show every year.
Okay, I remember 100 Years of Magic, which was 2001. I think ran for over a decade. So we were like still celebrating 100 Years of Magic in like 2011. I'm like, it's 110 at this point, but
yeah.
Anywho.
Kind of
anyway,
like the Diamond Celebration running into year 62. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, that whole 18-month thing, I think it's 18-month. They go, I get that. It's weird, but I get it. But a decade, that's a pretty long little celebration there.
I'm going to celebrate my next birthday for 18 months.
Do it. We all should be allowed to. If Disneyland can do it, so can we. Okay, folks, thanks so much for joining. Of course, I want to give a shout out to Nicole Kehoe 13.
Nicole!
Hi, Nicole. Thanks so much for leaving us a 5-star written review on iTunes. That's how simple it is to get a shout out on Disney Coast to Coast. Go to iTunes, leave that 5-star written review. Of course, you can connect with us between episodes at DisneyCoastToCoast.com. So go do that. And other than that, have a fantastic and magical week, everybody. Bye.
Thanks for watching Disney Coast to Coast. Have a magical day.